What's up, guys? This video is going to cover one simple thing: adding a background image to Pygame. If you have images for your character, that's more complicated because they have to move, they have to turn, they have to enter different states like running or crouching. But if it's a background image, it never moves, it never changes, it's just there. So let's hit run and see the current state of my game. I added one thing, which is to say, do we want the game or do we want the editor? I'm going to hit G to get the plain game. It's not the drag and drop editing right now. I just wanted to see where we left off. So this has our little guy. I'm moving. I'm jumping on a platform. Some of the platforms move. These black ones are portals. When you go in one, you come out the other. And this green beacon is our goal. When I touch it, it says you win. So we're going to keep all of that, exactly the same mechanics, just a different look, a different skin on the background. And since our background is blue, we kind of imagine this is floating in Lando Calrissian's Cloud City. I'm going to go with the blue sky background. So I just Googled blue sky, and I'm going to pick one of these. Not the most copyright friendly thing. I might be stealing someone's work, but I'm just using it as an example, and we'll come up with our own in a minute. Would somebody open the door, please? Right now, I'm going to take this one because it looks fine and it's big enough. So I'm going to say save as, and then in order to make this fit our game, we have an idea of the resolution. Okay, the resolution of our canvas right here is 640 by 480. So I'd like to make the image 640 by 480. You could have Pygame crop it, or you could have Pygame shrink it, or you could just try to throw it on screen and see what happens. But of course, we want to prepare things to make it easier in the end. So I'm going to go to our downloads, and I'm just going to use the classic Microsoft Paint. Okay, we've got this image, and I want to shrink it to the right dimensions. And I can't perfectly because imagine I do 640 here. Well, that's too short vertically, so I'm going to go 480, and then we'll crop or trim somehow the horizontal width. So now we've got this, and let's just see what happens if we trim off the right side, because that's what happens if you change the, I think they call it properties. Yeah. So what would it look like if we just said 640 right here? Hey, that looks okay. The sun is a little close to the corner for my aesthetic taste in terms of balancing, but it'll work for now. So I'm going to save this as a PNG. Whenever I've worked with Pygame in the past, it seems that PNGs are slightly nicer, but they can take other formats as well. And I'm just going to call it sky. Now, we're going to say there might be other backgrounds, right? If I called this background.png, that would work for the moment, but if we had multiple levels, then loading background would not really be helpful, because which one is it? Is it the sky or the forest or the swamp or whatever? So I'm going to name this sky to fit with the theme. So now I'm going to go to File, Upload here. And then we can drag and drop, or we can browse. And in my folder here, I click on Sky and add file, and it doesn't take long. We can click on it to make sure that it's there. 2 lines of code is all we need to get this going. I'm going to load the image at the top where I'm doing the colors and constants. And let's just throw it up here. I'm going to say sky equals pygame dot image dot load which does pretty much what you think it does. And then you put the name, okay, sky.png. If this was in a folder, you'd put the path to the folder. And if you imagine a later version of this game where we have lots of images, we would definitely put them in a folder. We would have one called images, and then inside there we could have, you know, one for backgrounds and one for characters and one for other stuff. Maybe even above the images there would be another level called assets or something, which would hold images and also, you know, sounds or whatever. But for now, this is going to load. But I'm going to hit run to test it. This will not do anything, right? When I run this game, it's not going to have the background. But it will test for errors. So if I made a typo, if I used the wrong name, if I did something in the wrong place, this would have told me. And the fact that it hasn't means that we're probably good to move on to the next step. So let's do the next step, which is currently every frame, it's redrawing everything. It says, put the new background on, put the new items on, put the guy on there, pretend like this is the first frame. Okay? There's another strategy, which is to only redraw some parts. You know, keep the background. If I move the guy, then I would like stamp the background back on there where the guy was and redraw him in the new spot. And that might be better in the end, but for now, we're going to stick with the strategy we have, which is just redrawing every frame, everything, every frame. So right here, I'm going to take off the screen fill blue, and I'm going to put a new method, which is screen.blit. Okay, blit is what you use to put images on the screen in Pygame. It comes from a hardware technique in the 80s where if you had a chunk of pixels and you want to sort of move them all in one stamp and put them in a new spot, they had a technique of moving them all in memory in one go, and that was called blit, and the name stuck. So blit is the name for stamping an image onto the screen. And later we'll get into the more complicated stuff like keeping the background from where we used to be. But for now, it's just where are we going to put it and what is the thing. So we're going to go sky, that was the name of our image, and then 0, 0 because it starts in the corner and we never have to change that. So I think I got it. Let's see what happens. I'm going to hit run, and then I'm going to say G for game. And there we go. It actually looks pretty good, especially the orange. I think the orange and the blue is a nice contrast. The complementary colors on a color wheel, you usually want to be far away, right? If I had blue right next to something very similar, then you wouldn't get to see the difference. But if I have, you know, opposites on the color wheel, which I think orange and blue are, then they'll stand out perfectly well. This has one problem, which is that we can't see our guy anymore. Our guy is completely invisible because he's white on some white pixels. So if I jump, you can see there he was hiding in the cloud, but we should probably change that. Maybe we can make our guy a different color. And this is already causing trouble because you never want to change one thing and have it change other things in a cascade. Like we change the background and then we also have to change the guy, and then that looks bad with something else, so we change something else. But for now, I think it'll work just okay to make our guy maybe a nice purple or something like that. We already have a color constant called orchid that I was using for one of our objects that I'm not going to use in my final version, so let's go ahead and commandeer that for the guy. I'm going to say orchid. That's only in his show method. It's not like saved as self.color or something, which it probably would be if we ever needed to mess with it. Like if we stepped in a swamp and got poisoned and we wanted our guy to turn green, then we could say, you know, guy.color equals green or something. So let's run this, and now our guy looks wonderfully visible, and I think that color is nicely balanced because I already had, given it some aesthetic treatment and decided to pick one that looked good next to the orange and the brown. Now we also have another problem with the goal. The beacon is way too light right next to the sun, so of course you're not going to stand out. We could make it so that it's somewhere else, or it's darker, or you could just say, well, the sun is the goal, and we just kind of make a hitbox there and leave the background as the real thing. Now that could be a bad idea because you don't want to mix background and foreground conceptually. Like if I thought the background mattered, then I might think I could jump on these clouds or something. And it also would make us really dependent on the background. We couldn't change it because then we'd have to change our hitboxes. But the sun being such a big important thing might be enough to break that rule. We'll see what we think. For now, I'm going to stick with this because I wanted to show the simplicity of putting an image in there, every frame, draw the other stuff on top, done. We only added 2 lines of code, and we only uploaded one thing. Not too bad.